Oh my, here we are playing with Ouija boards. My grandparents would definitely be ashamed. Have you ever played with the Ouija board? Have you ever had anything creepy happen after it? Well, these people have. These subscribers sent in their creepiest encounters while using Ouija boards. If you have a story that you'd like to share in a future video, whether it be a Ouija board story or something else, be sure to send it in to the website or the email you can find in the description down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Now, let's get into these truly creepy experiences with Ouija boards. Number 1. Haunted Ouija Board by Ayaka K. We've been playing with a Ouija board for quite some time now. This was until we received contact from a ghost who began spelling out my name along with the word love. As unsettling as this may sound, it gets stranger. We began inquiring more deeply into what the ghost wanted, and that's when it said it loved me. Now, you need to understand, I don't have any relation to this ghost at all. This creeped me out, but sadly, it got even more disturbing. Afraid, but curious, we continued communicating with the ghost, who soon informed us that he was simply waiting for me to die because he wanted my soul. Immediately, we tried closing the conversation with the ghost, but he just kept spelling my name over and over again. Eventually, we were able to stop the conversation, and being quite unnerved, my sister and I burned the board, hoping it was all just a sick joke. Unfortunately, things did not stop there. My boyfriend, who the ghost seemed extremely jealous of, got into a car accident shortly after. Meanwhile, I've been plagued by nightmares. Even stranger, stuff has begun moving on its own around my home, and things have continued getting stranger. Eventually, I became curious if the ghost was the one causing this, or if something else was there entirely. So, we decided to try to make contact again. We made a makeshift board out of paper and put a glass on it. Almost immediately, the glass began moving and spelling out my name again. Angry, I asked what the spirit wanted and when he was going to leave us alone. His response was never. Maintaining my composure, I asked him if there was anything I could do to help him move on. The answer sent chills through me. "Kill yourself," is what he said. I'd been battling severe depression and battling suicidal thoughts almost daily after my first contact with this malevolent spirit, which made me wonder if it wasn't trying to drive me to death. The air in the room changed, and it quickly became apparent what I believed to be a ghost felt much darker. I felt we were dealing with a demon. Unsure of what to do, we began praying. This only angered the entity, and it threw the glass we were using to spell things out with against the wall, shattering it. Scared, we broke off conversation once again. We've tried everything we can think of since this incident happened to get rid of this entity. Sadly, it's been to no avail, as he's still here. I'm scared and at a loss of what to do now. Why does it want me to die? And what is he planning to do with me if I do die? Will he use my soul? And what for if he does? I am just thinking about everything and out of answers as to what to do next. Please, if you have any ideas of what I can do or know of any way to help me rid of this thing, let me know. I'm more than open to any ideas. I'm quite afraid of everything going on. For now though, I'm still dealing with this entity to this day. Number 2. Playing with Ouija by Bridget Barnes. I've had paranormal experiences all my life. I believe this is in large part due to the fact that I almost died prior to birth, and some of my family are gypsies. My grandmother in particular even has a crystal ball. Then again, I could just be cursed, as my mother grew up near 3 women that were believed to be real-life witches. At any rate, I'm getting off track. People often say that if you play with Ouija boards, tarot cards, or the like, you're invoking and inviting evil spirits, demons, and the dead. I've never done this, and yet, to this day, such things still find me. While my mother was pregnant with me, she would often get visitations when my dad was out of the house. I was near death in utero, but the doctors didn't realize this until I was born. Quite often, when my mom would lay in bed, alone, while pregnant with me, she would often feel someone else on the other side of the bed. The bed would even go down as though someone was sitting in it, despite the fact that no one else was in the house. Other times, she would see something dark standing at the end of the bed, watching us, which would unnerve her. Many times when my dad was out of the house, my mother would get a sinking feeling that she could never quite shake. Over time, my dad would eventually leave, and after this, my mom bought a little starter house for us and our 5 kids. The house itself wasn't much, but we made it work. Shortly after getting settled into our new home, strange things began to happen. Our dryer would go on and off when not in use. Sometimes you would hear kids running around when my brothers and sisters were at school, and my baby was sleeping. This would also happen at night and wake us up quite often. At which point, we would have a hard time going back to sleep again. The creepiest thing would happen though, is when we would leave the house. We'd often come home to hoof prints and tracks as though a pig or some hooved animal had been wandering through our home while we were out. Sometimes, you would hear a ball bouncing in the attic, despite the fact that we never had any toys in the attic. As a toddler, I had a doll, like most girls my age did, with blonde hair and pink and white polka dot jumper, and a pull string. She often said things like, "I love you, mommy," or "I'm hungry, mommy." This is cute, right? Well, when my uncle Doug would pull the string, often while babysitting me, the doll would tell him to die, curse at him, and laugh evilly. This only happened when he pulled the string. Jumping forward a couple of years, once he had a house in Cedar Falls, Iowa. While living there, we would often hear scratching noises at the attic door. It wasn't like an animal. It was desperate, like a person clawing to escape with their lives while trapped inside the attic itself. Our dog would not go near the attic. If you were heading that way, as we used our attic like an entertainment room, the dog would leap out of our arms and run as fast as he could until you would shut the attic again and lock it up tight. Most recently, a few of my family members said they played with the Ouija board in that room. I had to stay in that house for a couple of months. I previously had to stay in the room, and this house is legit haunted. There were so many paranormal activity things happening to me when I was there. This goes doubly so for the studio apartment attached to the house. No one will go near that place if it isn't necessary. Are my family and I haunted? Cursed, I'm not sure. But these are just a few things we've experienced over the years. Number 3. The Boiling Loft by Caitlin G. The following story takes place almost a year ago exactly. I'm a teaching assistant, working for our after-school program at a private school in California. My coworker, who I'll call Em, and I have always believed our workplace to be haunted. I've always been sure of this, but she's at least believed it to be a possibility. Some of the activity witnessed by us in the school have been doors that would open and shut on their own. Sometimes we hear voices and footsteps when there shouldn't be any at all. Toys are often left in strange places after we put them away for the day, and we'd sometimes see things out of the corner of our eyes. If you can name it, it's happened here. Something else that ups the creep factor and doesn't help our situation at all is Em and I are often the last two on campus, and while the incidents stated are unsettling, none of these things have ever happened to anyone else. It's truly disturbing. As stated previously, we have many strange occurrences around our workplace, and this has led us to believe the place to be haunted. As such, we decided one day to go around with holy water and incense, trying to bless the building, and ask any spirits that might haunt the school to leave or move on. Believing this would work, we headed home for the day. The next day, Em and I were working with pre-K, and in the pre-K building there's a loft. Em was sitting at the table in front of the loft when one of our pre-K kids came up and sat in her lap. She had her head on Em's shoulders when she said, "There's a little boy up there." Em looked in the loft and saw no one, and so tried to laugh it off. She thought the girl was maybe trying to play a trick on her, and told the girl, "There's nobody there." The little girl, we'll call her A, sat up and became adamant that someone was in the loft. "He's right there. You can't see him because he's hiding from you." This unnerved Em, at which point she said, "Well, he can come down and play when he is ready." A looked at Em and said okay, before laying her head back down on Em's shoulder. A minute or two goes by when A suddenly shoots up and says, "Don't lock him in there. He doesn't want to be locked in there." Disturbed, Em comes to me and fills me in on her conversation with A. It is then I make a horrifying realization. The previous night, when I went through with holy water, I never put any in the loft. We looked up that night, and were not giving it a second thought. Thinking of what we could do, I remember when we bought a Ouija board last Halloween. I had it in the back of my car unused. Like dumbasses, we decided we'd try to use it now. Em and I knew it would be stupid to try to use the board in the school itself, so we drove down the street to the marina. After settling in, we brought the Ouija board out and began using it. The first thing we asked was if someone was there. The spirit of a young boy named Daniel came through, informing us that along with him, there were 3 spirits in one particular building. A female spirit named Mariah and a bad spirit. While Em believed the board right off, I was rather skeptical. I'd always been able to fear spirits from a young age, and I only felt one spirit in that building. It felt like bad news, but I kept this information to myself. So, Daniel, if that's his real name, tells us that he and Mariah are afraid of the other spirit, and that the other spirit was very angry. He continued on to say that it didn't like that I was trying to get rid of it, and that it wanted to hurt me. Along with this info, Daniel kept giving us the number 5 along with a string of other numbers. Soon after writing down the numbers, we closed the session to figure out what the numbers meant. My first thought was that it could be a phone number, and as it turns out, I was right. 3 of our coworkers have the same numbers that start with the same starting numbers. Seeing this, we asked if something was going to happen to our coworkers. The board said yes. We then asked if something was trying to harm them. The board once again answered yes. We soon closed the session and headed home. When we returned to work the next day, I went up to A and asked about the boy in the loft. I asked if she knew what he looked like or if he had a name. A was hesitant at first, but she eventually said, "His name is Daniel. He has dark hair, dark eyes, and gray skin." I tried to clarify with A, asking her if she meant his skin was pale, to which she said no. A then got up, grabbed a gray marker, and informed me his skin was gray like the marker. Needless to say, Em was freaked out and left the room, at that point I asked A if there was anyone else that had ever talked about him. She said that there was nobody else. This, in my mind, cemented that Em believed and I knew about the pre-K building being haunted. It also meant I was right about the fact that Daniel wasn't who he claimed to be. A few weeks go by, and with work being so busy, Em and I had practically forgotten everything to do with our 3 coworkers' numbers and the Ouija board session. This lasted as long as it took for those coworkers to go on a trip with 2 of their friends. The group of 5 had traveled to the Route 91 Harvest Festival in Las Vegas, which wound up becoming the worst mass shooting in the US history. Thankfully, they survived. After this happened, Em and I put all the pieces together. The shooting had taken place 5 weeks after our session on the Ouija board. Leading up to the shooting, the activity on the Ouija board had quieted down, and once our co-workers returned, the activity picked up again. This time, the paranormal occurrences had become more frequent and intense. It got to the point where the students were seeing and hearing things all the time. After enough activity, I decided to go through the building again. This time, however, I didn't use a Catholic prayer. Although I was born and raised Catholic, I had a falling out with the religion recently. As I stated previously, I've been able to sense spirits from a very young age. This was something my Catholic mother did not like at all. Feeling ostracized for being different, among other reasons, I found my way to Wicca, and have been a Wiccan ever since. As such, this time, I went through the building burning sage and performing a cleansing ritual instead. During the cleansing, I made a point to close and seal the board, and any door we may have unintentionally left open. To this day, it appears to have worked. Number 4. Ouija Board Stories by Salty Lucius. I'm currently 13 years old, and I've been messing with Ouija boards for about a year now. I do this with 2 friends, one of which usually just watches and doesn't actively participate. In the beginning, we were quite cautious and respectful when using the board. As time went on, however, we became less afraid of the board and more careless. Our first experience was in a friend's bedroom around 5 or 6 in the morning. We met a spirit going by the name of Riv. He was about 8 years old, liked video games, and was apparently killed in a manner he didn't wish to share with us. It was a safe and pretty nice starting experience speaking with the spirit. It helped us relax speaking with the spirits, and we felt he seemed like a nice soul. The second spirit we spoke with was very abrupt. The planchette we used, a flower-shaped cookie cutter we found, moved very slowly. We eventually talked to a spirit who claimed to be 0 years old before getting straight to goodbye on the board. That was that. The third spirit we spoke to was quite a bit more talkative, but still a bit strange. We nicknamed her Dinosaur Lady, because when we asked her about her age, she simply replied with AD. Another strange thing was, she seemed to speak in broken English, but we assumed this was because she was from an era from long before. Shortly after, she stopped communicating with us entirely. By the third time we ever used the Ouija board, we started seeing a spirit named Zozo. It was here where we stopped being afraid and started being a lot less cautious in our use of the board itself. We began screwing around, asking dumb questions like, do you like food? What do you like to do? Etc. This spirit humored us a bit before we asked it what its name was, and he spelled out Zozo. After doing this, things started to get a bit weird. My friend, who doesn't usually actively participate in our sessions, she's also the person whose house we did this session in, started experiencing strange things around her home. Doors would randomly open and shut, or slam. You'd hear strange sounds, and just things like that. We still mess around with the board from time to time, but we haven't got as much activity from it. The spirits that connect to us are usually very weak, and Zozo has decided to take over whenever he feels like. It's come to the point where we can tell it's Zozo by the shift in power of the planchette itself. It legitimately feels as though it's going to fly off the board when he takes over. So far, he's identified himself as both Zaza, Zozo, and Mama. But he doesn't really humor us anymore. We aren't really sure much about him, and I don't really have much else to add other than the events in this story took place in the span of about 6 months. Number 5. Ouija Board Spooks by Anonymous. The following events actually happened to a friend of mine in high school, who I will refer to as Sally. Sally experimented with the Ouija board in her room a couple of times while in bed. She says she only managed to contact something one time, and that was the last time she ever messed with a Ouija board. She apparently threw her board away, trying her best soon after to forget all about the experience entirely. Sally gave me no other information as to what had happened during her communication with whatever she was communicating with, outside of saying she wished she never let her curiosity get the best of her. After her experience with the board, however, she said she would occasionally wake up in the middle of the night to the sight of a black cat staring at her. Sally claimed the first 2 times she didn't think much of it, as she left her window open at night during the summertime. However, once it cooled down, she shut her window, and she would still awake to that cat staring at her. During these experiences, she said she was usually very tired, and so she would try to ignore the cat favor of getting more sleep. One night, however, she decided there must be a stray cat living in her house, and she decided to get up and put it outside. Reaching for the cat, she said it never broke eye contact with her, but upon trying to grab the cat, it simply faded and vanished in a puff of smoke. Obviously, she was freaked out by everything that had happened, so she didn't tell anyone about it because she thought maybe she was just having strange nightmares or sleepwalking and hallucinating due to paranoia. In an attempt to address her situation, Sally rearranged her room so that she was facing the wall now. After doing this, she said she would still wake up and feel like something was watching her, but she refused to look and see what it was and would instead go back to sleep. Sally's mother runs a babysitting service, and one day one of the parents' kids was feeling tired, so her mom allowed the child to sleep in Sally's bed for a midday nap. When the mother of the child finally showed up, asking where her daughter was, Sally's mom informed her she was in the bedroom laying down as she was tired. Upon going to check on her daughter, the mother found her daughter on the bed in tears. When the mother asked what was wrong, the daughter replied, "Mommy, I don't want to come back here. Sally's cat scares me." The mother, obviously concerned, leaves as quickly as possible after informing Sally's mom she won't be back and why. Sally overheard this conversation and was completely terrified because she realized she hadn't been hallucinating the cat. The thing that scared Sally the most, though, was that they didn't own a cat at all, so the only cat she could be speaking about was the one she kept seeing at night when she was woken up from sleeping. Afraid of sounding crazy, Sally acted like she'd never seen the cat herself, and soon after her mom went to a mattress store and subsequently threw out her old mattress. Sally says the black cat has never appeared since. Number 5. My Haunted Ouija Board by Samantha S. I was a teenager when this happened, but I can honestly say I remember it like it happened just a few hours ago. My friend, Bailey, and I were staying at her house for the weekend. It just happened to be the weekend that her mother decided to do some spring cleaning and clean out their spare bedroom. As teenagers, Bailey and I, of course, were doing more playing with the things we found than cleaning. Bailey pulled a box out of the closet and held it up, asking her mother what was inside. Her mother quickly snatched the box out of her hands and told her it was a Ouija board that her aunt had brought from home when she lived there. We shrugged it off and went on with our day. Later that night, her dad decided we needed to burn some of the things that had been thrown out. The fire was small and burning normally until her mother threw the Ouija board in it. What happened next is something I can only describe as unexplainable. The flames of the fire turned blue, and the fire flamed up much higher than before. We stood there looking at each other, all a bit shaken, but also glad that it was gone. Eventually, the fire burned down and we all settled in for bed. Bailey and I were in the den watching a movie when we heard it. Something rattling inside one of the boxes that was to go back into storage. Thinking her cat had climbed inside and become stuck, Bailey opened the box and immediately screamed. That could only have been matched if a man had jumped out of the box with a knife. I ran over to her and peered into the box. I found the Ouija board from earlier, alone in the box. Her parents ran in to find Bailey and I still staring into the box, trying to wrap our minds around what we were seeing. It was the middle of the night, but her dad grabbed the box and threw it outside. He proceeded to spray it with lighter fluid from the nearby grill and light it on fire. The flame was the same strange blue color, and this time there was an odd noise that came from it, almost like a hissing mixed with a quiet screaming. When the fire had died down, there was nothing but a pile of ash and embers. To my knowledge, the Ouija board has not made another appearance since, but even now, all these years later, I still get the chills thinking about it. Ouija boards are nothing to play with, and knowing what I know now, it terrifies me to think that some people play with them as if they are a toy. Be careful with them. Number 7. I made a Ouija board. Sent in by Anonymous. I decided I would share my Ouija board story. There needs to be some context though. I've made a few Ouija boards. It's one of my many hobbies. Not any flimsy pizza box and Sharpie one, but sturdy wooden ones with calligraphy lettering, inlays, and the whole 9 yards. I spend my time on them, making them unique and putting care into each, so I haven't made many. I'm not sure, but the details may be significant because I have a connection with each board. I believe it's affected the way that my experience have gone. If not the connection, the quartz inlay on my first board definitely did. My friends were excited to try my first board. None of us have ever used a board before though. We didn't dive into it blind, I made sure of that. I looked up things to do, not to do, and etc. We didn't find all of the information I know now, but we had enough to know when something went wrong. There was 4 of us at the time, 3 in the round each time, and always a scribe. Of course, nothing happened at first. We made little circles on the board and stayed on it for a long time with nothing. Soon, I tried something I remembered other people I had heard had done. I offered energy to the spirits. Then it started. Slowly, I made sure none of my friends were pushing it around, and it seemed legitimate. To add to the validity, I noticed each spirit I contacted had sort of a handwriting, meaning they moved the planchette with their own little quirks, and none were the same in the way they might move to the letters or say yes twice in a row. We tried to keep constant with the questions we asked, and when one spirit said goodbye, we would switch out scribes. Some of us got tired through the rounds, but I stayed fine. I switched out of the 4th round just for the sake of it though. Things went south in that round. The first 3 spirits were generally friendly and helpful, until I was the scribe. I had lead the other rounds, and this time, it was one of my friends. Now, this is where quartz comes in. For the sun and the moon on this first board, I wanted to make them inlays. The sun was mother of pearl, and the moon was a little quartz stone. She started off like we always did, asking if there was a spirit with us. It went to yes. When she asked for a name, all it would give us was O. So we started guessing names that started with O. We asked if his name was Owen, and it immediately went to yes. I thought it was odd, we got it on the first try, but I dismissed it as a coincidence. We asked him his age next. He said 0. But then he went to 2. We thought this was also odd, so we asked if he meant he was 20 or just 2. We told him to go to the sun for 2 and to the moon for 20. He went to the sun. He did a lot of things I dismissed as strange, like starting to go through the alphabet and making little circles on the side of the board. We asked him before he got too far into the alphabet if he was playing a game. It went to yes. Things got even weirder though. He went to the 2 corners on the side of the sun and kept making these loose and irregular ovals and kept going back to the letter O. When the planchette moved so far towards one of the players that it nearly went off the board, we had had enough. We forced it to stay on the board and to go to goodbye. We found out how many signs we missed and mistakes we made when we looked up more information right after, and over the next few days, especially after I realized an important fact, the planchette never went on the side of the board with the quartz moon. Supposedly quartz works off evil, and not once did the planchette ever go to the right below it. It wasn't very clear quartz, but it still seemed to have an effect. I realized the planchette was also trying to go to the 4 corners of the board, through the alphabet, and off of the board, all to let the spirit escape and or have a doorway into my house. When it did those odd ovals, I realized it was probably trying to do figure 8s, another sign something is wrong. It finally hit me that we might have been dealing with a board demon, or perhaps the one they call Zozo. When I realized it kept going back to O, Z is on the other side of the board, and so it couldn't spell the other half of its name. It's only a possibility. I have had others since then try to act like they are him to scare me, but the evidence is compelling enough for me to believe. I started putting silver on the board after that whenever I used it. I stayed in every session. We took breaks between spirits and I haven't had any problems since. Nothing else has been very notable with me in the Ouija board since, except for my session a few weeks ago. I don't often use the board, and this was at a party. Now I have depression and occasional suicidal thoughts, as much as I try to fight it and push them away. I had been crying earlier, and I had been having some negative thoughts at the little party, but my best friend managed to get me through it and get me back into things. Later, with different friends, I ended up using my latest Ouija board. We got 2 spirits, and it was one of the most heartwarming sessions I've ever had. The first was a little kid who was concerned that I was crying earlier and was very sweet to me. The second was an older man who spoke in mostly gibberish, as some spirits tend to do with open-ended conversations. But clearly, he had a message for me to say no. I asked what, he just spelled out to suicide. So, I guess the moral of my story is that this tool, whether it works or not, saved my life in some ways. Well, god dang. Those stories with Ouija boards were pretty dang creepy. If you enjoyed them, hit that like button as it helps me out a ton. If you're new to the swamp, why not subscribe, turn on notifications, and never miss a new video, as I upload them almost every single day on all things natural and supernatural. If you have a story you'd like to share on the channel, whether it be a Ouija board story or anything else, be sure to send it in to swampdweller.net, and or the email you can find in the description down below. I would absolutely love to share your creepy story. I also have some new merch. Be sure to check it out, it's in the top of the description. I'd love to see you guys wearing some cool Swamp Dweller t-shirts. See you guys soon with another creepy video.